Nobody ever asked Gus Hartley about his past. He was just the cook. The cafeteria on Galactic Trade Station Meridian served 40 different species every day. Some wanted their food frozen. Some wanted it still moving. A few needed meals that would kill most other beings in seconds. Gus handled all of it with a calm smile and steady hands. Nurse Prill sat at her usual spot near the counter. She was a veloxy, an insect-like creature with 4 arms and large nervous eyes. Her species was known for worrying about everything. Right now, she worried about her soup getting cold while she complained about her day. The patient refused treatment again, she clicked in frustration. Said our medicine tastes like poison. Gus slid a fresh bowl toward her. Did you try mixing it with food? Medicine is not food. Everything can be food if you prepare it right. He wiped down the counter with an old cloth. I once made a decent stew from something that was technically a rock. Prill stared at him. You are joking. Maybe, his eyes crinkled with warmth. Maybe not. In the kitchen behind him, a small crash sounded. A young sci-fi named Rella stumbled backward from a heating unit, clutching her hand. Her species was delicate, with translucent skin that showed blue veins underneath. She was barely out of adolescence and still learning. Let me see. Gus was beside her before Prill even processed what happened. He moved fast for an older human. His gray hair and lined face suggested someone past his prime, but his movements told a different story. He examined the burn with practiced ease. Without hesitation, he grabbed a handful of herbs from a nearby jar, crushed them between his palms, and pressed the paste against her injury. Hold this here, the sting will stop in a moment. Rella's pain-filled expression slowly relaxed. How did you know to do that? Picked it up somewhere. He patted her shoulder gently. Back to work in 5 minutes, you are doing fine. Prill watched this exchange with growing curiosity. She had studied human biology. Their homeworld, Earth, was classified as a Category 7 Deathworld. Extreme temperature swings, active predators, natural disasters, toxic plants, venomous animals. By galactic standards, nothing should survive there. Yet humans seemed so soft, so friendly. They smiled all the time. They made food for strangers. They asked about your day and actually listened to the answer. It did not add up. A heavy thud announced the arrival of Commander Toru. The Grendathi warrior was massive, covered in thick scales the color of dried blood. His species was bred for combat across 1,000 generations. He looked at Gus the way someone might look at a small pet. Human, the usual. Coming right up, Commander. Gus prepared a plate of raw meat with specific seasonings that Toru favored. No complaint, no reaction to the rudeness. Toru took the plate and grunted. I do not understand why they let your kind cook for a major station. Humans are barely space-worthy. Gus just smiled. Would you like seconds? I made extra today. The warrior blinked, clearly expecting a different response. He took the seconds. Prill shook her head. Humans were strange. The cafeteria continued its normal rhythm. Species came and went. Arguments broke out and settled down. Someone spilled something acidic and Gus cleaned it up without protective gloves, earning shocked looks from 3 different tables. Then the main doors opened with unusual ceremony. Admiral Koss entered with 6 attendants arranged in perfect formation behind him. He was Torellian, a species known for their rigid hierarchy and cold logic. His skin was pale gray, his eyes pure black, and his uniform displayed enough medals to sink a small ship. He surveyed the cafeteria with obvious disgust. This is the dining facility, his voice carried across the room. I was told this station had adequate services. One attendant whispered something to him. Koss laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. The chef is human. I thought humans only survived on one Deathworld. They certainly did not survive it through intelligence. Several aliens chuckled nervously. Humans were new to galactic civilization, easy targets. Rella looked at Gus with worry. He simply continued wiping the counter. I will not eat here, Koss announced. Bring acceptable food to my quarters, something not prepared by primitive hands. He turned and left with his entourage. The cafeteria slowly returned to normal conversation. Prill noticed that Gus had not stopped smiling throughout the whole display, but she also noticed something else. His hands, still holding the old cloth, had gone completely still. His eyes had tracked the Admiral's exit with perfect focus. For just a moment, he did not look like a harmless old cook. He looked like something else entirely. Gus, Rella tugged at his sleeve. Are you okay? The moment passed, he was just Gus again. Fine, little one, just thinking about what to make for dinner. He resumed his wiping. Some guests require special attention to their meals. Prill felt a small chill run through her thorax. She did not know why. She finished her soup and decided she would learn more about the unremarkable human cook. Something told her the story would be interesting. Outside, Admiral Koss was already forgotten by most. Inside, Gus hummed a quiet tune and began preparing for the evening rush. Just another day on Meridian Station. Just another day for the harmless human chef. Rella could not stop thinking about Admiral Koss and his cruel words. She chopped vegetables with more force than necessary, her translucent hands gripping the knife tight. What did he mean, she finally asked, about Deathworlds? Gus paused, his knife stopped moving for just a second. Then he resumed cutting, his rhythm unchanged. It is a classification system, he said. The galaxy rates planets by how dangerous they are. Category 1 is paradise. Category 10 is basically unsurvivable. And Earth is Category 7. That is correct. Rella frowned, but you seem so normal. Humans seem nice. Gus chuckled. We try to be. From her spot near the counter, Prill leaned closer. She had been listening while pretending to review medical files on her tablet. I have read about Earth, she offered. Your planet has extreme seasons, predators, diseases, natural disasters, yet your species thrived there. We adapted, Gus shrugged. What choice did we have? But you have only survived one Deathworld, Rella said innocently. Koss said so. The kitchen went quiet. Gus set down his knife. He looked at Rella with an expression she had never seen before. Not angry, not sad, just distant, like he was looking at something very far away. That is not entirely accurate. Prill nearly dropped her tablet. What do you mean? I spent 3 years on Pyrrhus 4 when I was younger. He picked up the knife again and resumed cutting. His voice stayed casual, like he was discussing the weather. Survey mission, our ship crashed. We had to wait for rescue. Pyrrhus 4, Prill's eyes went wide. The volcanic world, Category 8, the atmosphere alone would kill most species in hours. The air was tricky, Gus admitted. Had to filter everything through layers of treated cloth. The water was worse, full of sulfur, made your stomach burn for weeks until you got used to it. Rella stared at him. How did you eat? That was the interesting part. A small smile crossed his face. The local life forms were silicon-based, looked like moving rocks, tasted terrible raw, but if you boiled them long enough in filtered water, added some minerals from the cave walls, they became almost edible. You learned to cook on a Category 8 Deathworld. Prill's voice was barely a whisper. Had to. The emergency rations lasted 6 months. We were there for 3 years. Commander Toru had entered the cafeteria during this conversation. The massive warrior stood frozen near the doorway, his meal forgotten in his clawed hands. Human, his voice was different now, less dismissive. You survived Pyrrhus 4. Gus glanced at him. Among other places. Other places. There was a long pause. Gus seemed to be deciding something. Then he rolled up his sleeve, revealing a thick scar that ran from his shoulder to his elbow. The tissue was old but still angry-looking, like something had torn through muscle and nearly reached bone. Krethai's Prime, he said simply. 18 months, high-gravity world, Category 7. The predators there weighed 800 kilograms and could smell blood from 2 kilometers away. Toru stepped closer. His warrior instincts recognized the scar for what it was, a survival mark. You killed it. Eventually, Gus rolled his sleeve back down. It took 4 of us and most of our remaining ammunition, but yes, we killed it, then we ate it. He smiled slightly. Tasted like copper and regret. The cafeteria had gone completely silent. Every alien within earshot was staring at the old human cook like they had never seen him before. Why, Rella asked softly, why were you on these worlds? Gus returned to his vegetables. I worked for a survey company. We took contracts that other teams refused, dangerous jobs on dangerous worlds. The pay was good, and I was young enough to think I was immortal. How many, Toru demanded, how many Deathworlds? Gus did not answer immediately. He finished cutting, scraped the vegetables into a pot, and wiped his hands clean. Enough, he finally said. Prill watched him closely. The human was uncomfortable with the attention. His shoulders had tensed. His eyes kept moving to the exits, classic stress responses. He was not bragging, he was not proud. He simply did not want to talk. About it. That made her believe him completely. The food will be ready in 20 minutes, Gus announced to the cafeteria. Same menu as yesterday. The green sauce is spicier this time, so be careful. Slowly, conversations resumed, but the atmosphere had changed. Aliens kept glancing at the cook with new expressions: fear, respect, curiosity. Toru took his usual seat but did not touch his meal. He just watched Gus work. Rella moved closer to her mentor. Gus, are you okay? He looked down at her with warmth. I am fine, little one. Those days are far behind me. Now I just make soup and try to keep you from burning yourself. She smiled, but uncertainty remained in her eyes. An attendant in Admiral Koss's colors appeared at the counter. The Admiral requests that you prepare dinner for his private gathering tonight. He expects excellence. Gus nodded politely. Please tell the Admiral I would be honored. The attendant leaned closer, lowering his voice. He also told me to inform you that he does not eat food prepared by lesser species. Consider this a test you cannot pass. The attendant left. Rella's hands clenched into fists. How can you just accept that? Gus smiled. It was the same warm smile he always wore. But Prill noticed something new in his eyes, something patient and cold. Some tests, he said quietly, have unexpected results. 7 courses, 40 guests, 1 impossible deadline. Gus moved through his kitchen like water flowing around stones. Every motion had purpose. Every ingredient found its place at the perfect moment. Rella worked beside him, her nervousness showing in small mistakes. A dropped spoon, a slightly uneven cut. Each time, Gus corrected her gently without breaking his rhythm. Tell me a story, she said suddenly. It helps me focus. Prill watched from the doorway. She had no official reason to be there, but curiosity had become an obsession. She needed to know more about this strange human. Gus considered the request while preparing a delicate sauce. Have you heard of frozen moons? No. There is one in the outer systems, no official name, just a designation number that I forgot long ago. His hands kept working as he spoke. I crashed there during a supply run. The rescue beacon broke on impact. I was alone. Rella's eyes went wide. For how long? 7 months. 7 months alone on a frozen moon? Prill could not help interrupting. How did you survive? The moon had caves, deep ones where geothermal vents kept things slightly warmer. I found lichen growing on the walls, tasted like dirt mixed with sadness, but it kept me alive. He smiled at the memory. I also learned that certain ice crystals could be melted and filtered into clean water. The trick was finding the right depth. Too shallow and the water was toxic. Too deep and creatures lived in it. Creatures. Blind things, all teeth and hunger, they hunted by vibration. He added spices to the sauce. I learned to walk very softly. Rella shuddered. That sounds horrible. It was educational. Gus tasted the sauce and nodded with satisfaction. Survival teaches you what matters: food, warmth, the sound of your own breathing. Everything else becomes noise. Prill stepped closer. That is 3 Deathworlds now. Pyrrhus 4, Crethai's Prime, and this frozen moon. How many more? Gus paused. The question hung in the air like smoke. There was Verdania, he said finally. A jungle world, beautiful from orbit, everything green and alive. He resumed cooking. Everything was also poisonous: the plants, the animals, the water. Even the air carried toxins after certain flowers bloomed. Category 6, but it felt worse. His expression darkened briefly. We lost 2 team members in the first week. They ate fruit that looked safe. It was not. How did you survive? I learned which poisons could be neutralized through cooking. Heat changes things. Acid changes things. Combinations of ingredients can turn death into dinner. He plated the first course with artistic precision. I became very good at not dying. Rella carefully carried the plates toward the serving area. Why do you keep doing this? Why keep going to these places? The pay was good, Gus repeated, but his voice lacked conviction this time. Prill noticed, that is not the real reason. Gus was silent for a long moment. Outside, the sounds of the dinner gathering filtered through the walls. Admiral Koss's loud voice dominated the conversation, laughter at jokes that were probably cruel. Someone had to do it, Gus said quietly. Survey teams map new worlds. They find resources, safe zones, dangers to avoid. Their work saves thousands of lives that come after. He looked at Prill directly. Those missions mattered even when they cost us. The dinner service began. Course after course went out. Each dish was perfect, each presentation flawless. Admiral Koss ate without comment. His silence spoke louder than insults would have. Between courses, Rella returned with empty plates and worried expressions. He keeps staring at you through the window, like he is waiting for something. Let him wait. The final course was dessert, a creation of spun sugar and rare fruits that had taken Gus 3 hours to prepare. It was beautiful. It was delicious. It was, by any measure, extraordinary. Koss summoned Gus to the dining room. The old cook walked in calmly. 40 aliens stared at him, some with curiosity, some with contempt. Koss sat at the head of the table, his black eyes unreadable. Human, you cook adequately. Thank you, Admiral. Tell me, Koss leaned forward. Your homeworld is Category 7, a respectable number. My homeworld is Category 5, also respectable. But I wonder about your experience beyond Earth. Word had spread. Koss knew about the earlier conversations. Have you truly survived multiple Deathworlds, or is this some human exaggeration? Gus stood straight, his voice remained calm. I have survived Pyrrhus 4, Crethai's Prime, an unnamed frozen moon, Verdania. Murmurs rippled through the guests. 4 worlds, Koss waved dismissively. Impressive for a human, I suppose. And 3 more. The room went silent. Gus continued without emotion. A tidally locked planet where I led survivors for 2 years. An ocean world with no land where I lived on a raft. And a world undergoing extinction from an asteroid impact where I helped evacuate colonists until the last ship. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. Admiral Koss stared at the old human chef. For the first time, something other than contempt flickered in his black eyes. 7 Deathworlds. Yes. You expect me to believe this? Gus smiled. It was not a warm smile. I expect nothing, Admiral. I simply answered your question. Now, if you will excuse me, the kitchen requires attention. He turned and walked out. Behind him, 40 aliens sat in stunned silence. Prill watched Gus return to his kitchen. He began washing dishes like nothing had happened. But she saw his hands trembling slightly. 7 worlds, 7 impossible survivals. And somehow, Prill knew there was still more to learn. 3 days after the dinner, Gus could not find peace. Aliens filled his cafeteria from morning until night. They came from every section of the station. Some wanted food, Most Wanted Stories, they watched him cook, with expressions ranging from fear to fascination. Gus hated it. He had lived quietly for 15 years, just a cook on a space station. Nobody special, nobody interesting. Now everyone knew his name. Everyone wanted something from him. Rella noticed his discomfort. You could tell them to leave. They are customers, customers eat. He stirred a pot of soup without enthusiasm. This will pass. It did not pass. Commander Toru arrived during the lunch rush. The massive warrior pushed through the crowd with ease. Aliens scattered from his path like small fish avoiding a shark. He stopped at the counter and stared at Gus. I have questions. I have soup. Your soup can wait. Toru's voice carried authority. The cafeteria went quiet. You claimed 7 Deathworlds. I want details, real details, not kitchen stories. Gus set down his ladle. Tiredness showed in his eyes. Why does it matter? Because I am Grendathi. My people respect survival. We need to understand those who walk death's edge and return. Toru leaned closer. You intrigue me, human. That has not happened in decades. Prill pushed her way to the front of the crowd. She had been researching Gus for 3 days straight. Her findings disturbed her. I looked up your records, she said. Everything you described is verified, every world, every incident, but the records also mention details you did not share. Gus's expression flickered. Records lie. Not these. Prill held up her tablet. The tidally locked planet. You did not just survive there. You led 19 people for 2 years. Only 11 made it to rescue. Silence fell like a hammer. Gus stared at the tablet. His hands gripped the counter edge until his knuckles went white. 8 died, he said quietly. I remember their names. Tell me, Toru's voice had softened, strange, coming from a warrior. Tell me what happened. Gus closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were distant, lost in memory. The planet had one side always facing its star. Eternal day, burning heat. The other side faced darkness, eternal cold, deadly storms. His voice was flat. We crashed in the twilight zone, the narrow strip between extremes. It was survivable, barely. What killed your people? Everything, Gus laughed bitterly. The plants in the light zone released toxic spores when threatened. The creatures in the dark zone hunted anything with warmth. We lived in the middle and prayed the balance held. He paused. The cafeteria was completely silent. I cooked their last meals, he continued. Each person who died, I made them something good before the end, something that reminded them of home. His voice cracked slightly. It was all I could offer. Rella wiped tears from her translucent cheeks. Several aliens in the crowd had similar reactions. Toru remained stoic, and the ocean whirled. 2 years on a raft I built from wreckage. Gus's composure returned slowly. The creatures in the water could dissolve metal with their saliva. I learned to harvest them carefully. Their flesh was edible if you removed certain glands. The extinction world. Asteroid impact, colony evacuation. 30,000 people needed to leave before the dust cloud killed everything. He met Toru's eyes. I ran the last food station, kept people fed while they waited for ships, refused to leave until every colonist was aboard. The records say you almost missed the final transport. The records are correct, Gus shrugged. Someone had to be last. Toru studied the human for a long moment. Then slowly he pressed his clawed fist against his chest. The Grendathi salute of respect. You have walked with death 7 times and returned, the warrior said formally. My people have a word for such beings. We call them shadow walkers. It is the highest honor we can give. Gus looked uncomfortable. I am just a cook. No, Toru's voice was firm. You are a survivor who chose to feed others instead of forgetting. That is something more. The crowd began to disperse. The moment felt too private for public consumption. Prill approached the counter carefully. Gus, why become a cook after all that? You could have done anything. He considered the question while absently cleaning his workspace. When you survive something terrible, you have choices, he said finally. You can become hard, cold. You can decide the universe owes you something and take what you want. He looked at Rella. Or you can decide that survival means nothing if you cannot help others survive too. So you cook. I feed people, he smiled softly. When everything else falls apart, food remains. A warm meal can save someone's soul even when you cannot save their life. Prill felt something shift in her understanding. Humans were not soft despite their Deathworld origins. They were soft because of them. They chose kindness because they knew how rare it was. Admiral Koss appeared at the cafeteria entrance. His expression was strange, almost respectful. Human, he called out. I have reviewed classified records regarding your service. There is mention of an eighth world, one that is not in your official file. The cafeteria fell silent again. Gus's face went blank, completely blank, like a door slamming shut. I do not discuss that, he said. I am asking, and I am refusing. For the first time, something dangerous flickered in the old cook's eyes. Some stories are not for sharing, Admiral. That one stays with me. Koss held his gaze for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he nodded. As you wish. He left without another word. Prill watched Gus return to his cooking. His hands moved automatically, but his mind was clearly elsewhere. 8 worlds, 7 discussed, 1 hidden. What could be worse than everything he had already survived? Night cycle on the station meant dim lights and empty corridors. Most species slept. The cafeteria stood dark and quiet. Prill found Gus sitting alone at a corner table. A single lamp illuminated his weathered face. In his hands, he held a small photograph, creased and faded with age. She almost turned away. This felt private, personal, wrong to interrupt. You can sit, Gus said without looking up. I heard you coming 3 corridors back. Veloxy footsteps have a distinct sound. Prill approached slowly. I did not mean to intrude. You have been curious since the beginning. Might as well finish what you started. He gestured to the chair across from him. Sit. She sat. The photograph showed a young boy standing beside 2 adults. A family. The background was strange. Gray skies, dead trees, crumbling buildings. Earth, Gus said, approximately 400 years ago by your calendar. That is you. When I was 8 years old, he set the photograph down gently. The 8th Deathworld Prill, the one Admiral Koss found in classified files. It was not a survey mission. It was not a job. Prill waited. Her multiple hearts beat faster. It was home. The word hung between them like a wound. Earth went through a period we call the climate collapse, Gus continued. His voice was distant, mechanical, like he was reciting facts to protect himself from feeling them. The year was 2412, rising temperatures, melting ice, flooded cities, crop failures. Everything that could go wrong went wrong at once. I have read about this. Your species nearly went extinct. Nearly? Gus laughed without humor. Billions died, governments collapsed, the air became toxic in many regions, fresh water became more valuable than gold. How old were you? 8 when it started, 15 when it ended. He touched the photograph again. My parents died in the 2nd year, starvation. We had food, but they gave their portions to me. I did not realize what they were doing until it was too late. Prill felt her thorax tighten. Grief was universal. Every species understood loss. I survived by scavenging, Gus said. Cities became hunting grounds. You learned which buildings had supplies and which had dangers. You learned to move at night. You learned to trust nobody. How did you eat? Anything I could find. Rats, insects, plants that grew in the cracks of old roads. His expression darkened. I learned to cook because raw food killed people, parasites, bacteria, toxins. Proper preparation made the difference between survival and slow death. You were a child. Children adapt. That is what we do. He met her eyes directly. By age 12, I was cooking for a refugee camp. 300 people depending on me to turn garbage into meals. I made soup from things that should not have been edible. I kept people alive through winters that killed thousands. Prill struggled to process this. The galactic community saw humans as newcomers, friendly primitives from a dangerous world. They did not see this. They did not understand. The other Deathworlds, she said slowly. You chose them, you went deliberately. Yes. Why? Gus picked up the photograph again. Because during the collapse, the people who fed others were the ones who kept humanity alive. Not the fighters, not the leaders, the cooks, the farmers, anyone who could turn nothing into something. He stood and walked to the window. Stars filled the darkness beyond. I survived because someone fed me when I was starving, he continued. A stranger in a ruined city. She gave me half her ration and taught me how to prepare food safely. I never learned her name. She died 3 weeks later in a building collapse. So you feed others? I feed others, he nodded. Every dangerous world I visited, every impossible situation I faced, I made sure nobody went hungry. That became my purpose, my reason for surviving when others did not. Prill understood now. The gentleness was not weakness, it was philosophy, a deliberate choice made by someone who had seen the worst of existence and decided to respond with kindness. The galaxy thinks humans are soft, she said quietly. The galaxy is welcome to think whatever it wants. Gus turned to face her. We know what we are. We are the children of a Deathworld who chose not to become monsters. We are survivors who decided that helping others survive matters more than personal victory. That is why you do not talk about Earth. The other stories are adventures, challenges overcome. Earth is different. His voice caught slightly. Earth is family dying so you can live. Earth is carrying guilt for 60 years because you ate food that someone else needed more. Earth is the reason I cook and the reason I cannot stop. Prill stood and approached him carefully. Thank you for telling me. Do not share it. The others can know about Pyrrhus and Crethis and all the rest. This one stays between us. I understand. An alarm shattered the silence. Red lights flashed through the corridors. Emergency broadcasts filled the air. Environmental failure in Sector 7. Multiple species trapped. Toxic conditions developing. All emergency personnel report immediately. Gus was already moving. He grabbed his emergency bag from under the counter and headed for the door. Wait, Prill called. You are a cook, not emergency personnel. He paused at the doorway. When he looked back, his eyes held something Prill had never seen before. Purpose, clear and absolute. When things fall apart, he said, someone has to feed the survivors. That is what a human does. He disappeared into the flashing red corridors. Prill followed without hesitation. The 8th Deathworld had created him. Now she would see what that creation could do. Sector 7 had become a nightmare. Gus pushed through sealed doors into chaos. The environmental systems had failed catastrophically. Toxic gas pockets filled random corridors. Temperature swings made some areas freezing and others burning. The water supply was contaminated with industrial chemicals. Dozens of aliens huddled in small groups throughout the sector. Some were injured. Some were panicking. Most were simply waiting to die. Gus did not see disaster. He saw a problem. Problems could be solved. Everyone who can walk move to the central hub, he called out in a voice that carried without shouting. Calm, authoritative. Stay low, the toxic gas is heavier than air. Cover your mouths with clothing if you have nothing else. Aliens stared at him. A human was giving orders. Commander Toru emerged from a side corridor, his scales scorched from a temperature spike. He took one look at Gus and understood immediately. You heard him, the warrior bellowed. Move now. Order emerged from chaos. Gus directed traffic while assessing the situation. His mind cataloged threats automatically. Decades of survival training processed information faster than conscious thought. The air recyclers are offline, he told Toru. We have maybe 4 hours before carbon dioxide buildup becomes fatal for oxygen-breathing species. Can it be fixed? Not in time. Gus pulled supplies from his emergency bag. We need to keep people calm, warm, and fed until rescue breaks through the sealed bulkheads. Fed at a time like this. Especially at a time like this. Gus found a functioning food synthesizer and began working. Hungry people panic. Hungry people make mistakes. A warm meal gives hope. Hope keeps people alive. Toru watched the human work. Every motion was precise. Every decision was instant. This was not a cook. This was a survivor in his natural element. Prill arrived with medical supplies. She immediately began treating injuries while Gus organized food distribution. More aliens gathered in the central hub. The space was cramped but safer than the outer corridors. Temperature remained stable. Air quality held at breathable levels. Admiral Koss pushed through the crowd. His uniform was torn. His perfect composure was gone. He looked almost ordinary. "Human," he demanded. "What is happening? Why are you giving orders?" Gus did not look up from his work. "Because I have experience with situations like this. Do you?" Koss had no answer. "Then help or stay quiet." Gus handed him a tray of food packets. "Distribute these to the injured first. Make sure everyone drinks water. We need to prevent dehydration." For a long moment, Admiral Koss stared at the human. Then, slowly, he took the tray and began distributing food. Prill watched with amazement. The most arrogant being she had ever met was taking orders from a cook. Hours passed. Conditions worsened. Some corridors became completely impassable. The rescue teams struggled against sealed bulkheads and failing equipment. Gus never stopped moving. He identified safe zones. He rationed supplies. He prepared meals from synthesizer outputs that others would have considered inedible. A Tyrellian child began crying. The young one was part of Koss's delegation. Fear had overwhelmed her completely. Gus knelt beside her. "What is your name?" "Sira," she whispered. "Sira, I am going to tell you a secret." He spoke softly just for her. "This is scary, but scary things always end. You just have to be brave until they do. Can you be brave for me?" She nodded, still trembling. "Good girl, now I am going to make you something special, my grandmother's recipe." He prepared a simple sweet from basic ingredients. "She made this for me when I was scared. It has magic in it." The child ate the treat. Her tears slowed, her breathing steadied. Koss watched this exchange. Something changed in his black eyes, something that looked almost like respect. More hours passed. The air grew thin. Species with higher oxygen needs began struggling. Gus organized shifts, keeping the weakest near ventilation points. He had been awake for 36 hours. He had not eaten since the emergency began. Every meal he prepared went to others. Prill noticed. "Gus, you need rest." "Later." "You need food." Later, he kept working. "The rescue teams are close. I can feel it in the vibrations through the floor, military cutting tools. They will break through within the hour." He was right. The bulkhead exploded inward 40 minutes later. Rescue teams flooded the sector. Medical personnel began triage. Engineers worked to restore systems. When the chaos settled, station authorities found Gus Hartley sitting against a wall, ladling soup into bowls for shell-shocked survivors. Nobody had asked him to stay. Nobody had ordered him to help. He simply did what he had always done. He fed people. The station commander held a ceremony 3 days later. She wanted to honor Gus with a medal. He tried to refuse. "I just made food," he said. "Anyone could have done it." "No," Commander Toru stepped forward. The warrior pressed his fist to his chest again. "Not anyone, you." Admiral Koss approached next. His movements were formal, deliberate. "I was wrong about your species," he said. The words seemed difficult for him. "I dismissed humans as primitive, weak. I did not understand what I was seeing." "And what were you seeing?" Gus asked. "Strength that does not need to threaten, power that chooses gentleness." Koss bowed his head. "The Tyrellian Assembly offers formal apology for my previous insults." Rella hugged Gus tightly. "I knew you were special." I am not special, little one. He patted her back. I am just old. Old people have seen things, that is all. Life returned to normal on Meridian Station. The cafeteria reopened. Aliens came and went. Food was served with the same care as always. But things were different now. Aliens no longer looked at Gus with condescension. They looked at him with quiet respect. Some nodded as they passed, some simply smiled. A new crew member arrived 3 weeks later. She had never heard the stories. She sat at the counter and looked around with confusion. Everyone talks about this place, she said to Prill. What is so special about the cafeteria? Prill smiled. The chef has experience with difficult environments. As if on cue, Gus slid a bowl of soup across the counter. Steam rose from the surface. The smell was welcoming, warm, safe. Eat, he said to the newcomer, before it gets cold. She took a bite, her eyes widened. This is incredible. Where did you train? Gus smiled, the same warm smile he had always worn. Here and there, he said, I picked things up along the way. He returned to his kitchen and began humming. Just another day for the harmless human chef. Just another day surviving.